I did want to move into discussing greenness of processes, which is something that came up in our conversations ahead of time. But when it comes to peptide manufacturing, there's a fair amount of discourse about greenness, which is the environmental impact of a process, and it's the process mass intensity, the PMI. So, to my panelists, how should we think about a process's greenness? How do we measure it, and to what degree is it associated with PMI?
PMI in itself is it already it is sorry, Kevin, you want to go? Well,
No,
it's
please,
already
Matteo.
a nice way to measure your process. I think one of the problem of using the PMI is that the PMI include all the reagent through the process, including the water used in purification. So the PMI for the overall process sometimes is misleading because you have water and acetonitrile and doesn't take into consideration the chemical hazard of your reagent. So I think sometimes you want to focus on the PMI of the synthesis and the PMI on the purification. A good example of this is if you look at the PMI of a recombinant process, it's very, very, very large. The difference being that most of that PMI is driven by the fermentation liquid, which is not as nasty, if you want, as the chemical DMF and piperidine and TFA waste and ether waste. So PMI should be used to understand the chemical, the environmental impact should be used by segment and understanding the chemical impact of this segment. And I think in itself now, this is things that define the PMI in terms of chemical hazard and environmental impact doesn't exist to my knowledge. So that's why I think it's inappropriate if looking at segment, and if you can put we can work to put a chemical hazard to that number of the segment.
Yeah, I 100% agree that PMI is a great way to do a side-by-side comparison of processes, but I think we need to think about other reagents, as you alluded to. The polar aprotic solvents that are used very ubiquitously throughout solid phase peptide synthesis are solvents that the industry is trying to move away from, and these large volumes of some of these polar aprotics that are difficult to recover as well, I think is part of the problem. And so, anything that we can do to not only lower the PMI, but to move away from some of these reagents into the more recoverable solvents. I mean, there's some of the large volume washes that they, is performed generally with, DMF or DMSO. You can change to, some of the acetates and be just as effective in the removal of the offending reagents that are part of the coupling reaction. And so I think there's opportunities to investigate the utilization of other solvents through solid phase that have a easier pathway toward recoverability to help both lower the PMI, but also just improve the overall greenness of processes. I think it's an area where we really need to press to improve, the environmental footprint of solid phase synthesis. It's also one of the major drivers to move away from solid phase and into some of these alternative synthetic approaches that we've been talking about, purely chemical synthesis or the linker-based syntheses, which are inherently much lower in solvent consumption.
Yeah, and regarding this aspect of the greener, what is called the green solvent, there is an effort in the industry, and you can see by the number of articles by multiple CDMO in relationship with, in collaboration with big pharma, to explore this alternative solvent. And what is being very clear at this point, is that there is no one solvent that can replace DMF, for example. But it's always a combination of solvent, which unfortunately will be a little bit more complicated to recover them. But the one thing that I think is an obstacle to the implementation of this green solvent philosophy is that there are too many attempts to generate my green solvent. So different people have created different combination of solvent, and they say this is the way to go and that's the way to go. And I think we need a step for the industry to try to settle on a common platform. Because I think when you reach a common platform of ideal combination of solvent, where you have your preference of more or less the MSO versus ethyl acetate, the one thing is we will all do similar chemistry. We will have the advantage of some of these solvents will be required in larger volume, which will push down the cost of some of these solvents. Some of these solvents are a little bit, because they're not used in very, very large volume, they're still very expensive. So there is a resistance in implementing in chemistry because of the cost of this Greenness solvent. And so if we can reach an agreement of what are the ideal Greenness solvent for SPPS, or at least try to make a common effort to study them together, I think that will help the industry to move toward this greener solvent. And the other thing is, if you settle on one set of solvent, there is a series of regulatory implication, the quality of the solvent, that will allow you to be considered the standard in the industry. And so when you file for your NDA at the end, and when you go to the FDA or to the European community, this is going to be recognized as the standard in the industry. The problem of genotoxicity of this reagent, whatever can come up later, is going to be unified. So we will all take advantage of this unity in approach. But I don't know. There are people like Dr. Kopak at Lilly that are trying to drive a common effort, but we are still too dispersed, in my opinion, in the industry.
Yeah. Maybe just to add on to that, Matteo, I still think probably our best option is to move away from solid phases, as soon as we can. I think that's gonna get us to a position where we've really removed a number of the offending solvents that are really problematic, the dichloromethanes, the DMF, the DMSO, and reduce that solvent volumes that are used for synthesis quite substantially. So that in my mind is probably our biggest opportunity to both lower cost but improve our environmental footprint for peptide synthesis.
Well, the dichloromethane, I think, is out of the window totally at this point in the US and in Europe. So I think that's really gone. I don't know people that use dichloromethane in SPPS in large volume yet. Maybe some special reaction, but.
Yeah. Chuck, anything to add on greenness or process efficiency?
Not much. I'll just point back to biological processes, which are, I think, reasonably inherently green. Most waste streams go down city sewer. Yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. If that's enabled. Also production capacity, very few limitations in the biologic space for currently, not during COVID, of course, but now. I mean, a lot of the production capacity limitations today for peptides is being squeezed by GLP-1 types of activities, which of course are great economically for the industry, but tend to put a damper on, for the normal small pharma client who wants to make a little bit of product, that becomes difficult from a capacity perspective.
Yeah, I saw an audience question come in here from Thomas, who asked, what have you seen as the most impactful steps in reducing solvent usage rather than finding alternative green solvents. Does anybody want to speak to that before we?
Yeah, maybe I can take a stab at that. And actually it touches on one of the earlier questions that also came through, which is, are there similarities between peptide synthesis and oligonucleotide synthesis? And there really are. They're both a growing chain of monomers sequestered on a bead of one way or another. And so I think one of the ways, other than just looking at greener solvents, is solvent reduction through reuse. And so we found, we've actually published papers on this in presentations where 8 sequential washes tend to mean that the final wash has very, very little impurities in it, but it does get you to a point where you have the necessary purity profile remaining. And so those final washes are very effective in use as an early wash in a subsequent step. And so doing that shifting of washes, and it does require holding tanks and things, but it can be substantial, 20, 30, 40% reduction in solvent consumption just by the reuse of washes to efficiently use low impurity containing washes as an initial wash for the very high impurity bed of polymer or of beads. So that's one way. It's a quick way. Again, it does require a little bit of infrastructure, but not a whole lot more than that. And like I said, we've got a few publications and some presentations out there describing that. And that's being utilized pretty substantially in oligonucleotide syntheses, but also as a part of some peptide synthesis in solid phase builds.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. That was great.
There is one issue. Oh, no, maybe we're short of time. There is one aspect that is very interesting and is getting rid of washes in solid phase peptide synthesis. There are articles out there that talk about how you don't need to wash, for example, after you have coupled an amino acid before you go to the next step, which is the deprotection, and use the same solvent that you're using in the reactor by adding, for example, piperidine. And these are interesting ideas how you can avoid consuming washes that maybe you don't need to execute. So evaporation of the piperidine after the protection. So there are a lot of ideas out there to get rid of the washes, because in reality, the biggest consumption in SPPS are the washes. The reaction where you do the piperidine, the protection, and the coupling, this volume are about 20% of all the solvent that you use. The rest are washes. And so if you can get rid of the washes because you think out of the box and you think, why do I need to wash and do I really need to wash? It's a very interesting way of reducing solvent consumption.